Hi everybody, welcome into Watch Me Wednesday live from my studio here, Canton Village Quiltworks in Mesa, Arizona. It is episode number 42 today, and I had a pretty awesome week. I hope you all did too. Our family was visiting from Pennsylvania, so we got to do a little getaway this weekend with them. We went up to, my husband and I, as a lot of you know, are hikers, so we went up and we hiked. We couldn't hike the highest peak in Arizona, which is what we set out to do. They had the parks closed because right now it's very dry. Yes, we're the desert, but where we went was up to Flagstaff. It's very dry, and we could not get in to hike Humphreys Peak, which is the highest peak in Arizona. Because they had it closed. The San Francisco Peaks is closed because they just don't want fires accidentally being started. It's very, very dry. So any of you who follow me on Facebook or Instagram might have seen some of the pictures that I took from our hike. We did do an alternate hike this past weekend up Kendrick's Peak, which is kind of directly across from Humphreys Peak. And it's a little bit lower in elevation, not much, but when we got to the top, we got to talk to the ranger that's in the lookout tower there, and she actually gave us quite an education as to how they watch for fires. And we had a 360-degree view. We could see probably about 100 miles from the top of this mountain. The mountain stands at about 10,600 feet or so in elevation, and we started our hike. Our hike was about 2,600 feet in elevation gain. So, you know, you start partway at down the mountaintop. So when we got to the top and we saw this 360-degree view, we could see as far as the north rim of Grand Canyon, and then down into the valley around Flagstaff and way out down towards Phoenix. But there was a lot of brown, and the brown was because it's dry. And where it was brown, the ranger explained that it should have been green. That's how desperate they are up in the Flagstaff area for rain. And guess what? We actually have rain coming in the forecast. It's only a 40% chance, but it would be really great if we got some. So anyway, we got some really good exercise in, and we also got to go to another place on our bucket list, Antelope Canyon, with our niece and nephew and their two kids. And I had some awesome pictures of Antelope Canyon. I still have a ton to go through and look at. But if you've never heard of or seen Antelope Canyon or been there, definitely take a look at my pictures. It's really some good quilty inspiration for you. The pictures were phenomenal. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It's a slot canyon. If you don't know much about what a slot canyon is, it's basically, it's you know how Grand Canyon's big and wide open. A slot canyon is very narrow, opening on the surface of the ground, and you go down in to it, and there are these amazing formations that are all carved out via erosion from fast-moving waters. And yeah, you can go hike in them. You can go, but you have to go on a tour, because it is on Native American reservation land. So if any of you are planning to do something about that, look it up. We went to Lower Antelope Canyon. There is an upper and a lower Antelope Canyon. They're very different, but very close together. But it was so fascinating. So definitely go take a look at my pictures. So we had a great week and a half with our family here. It was great having them here, and now it's back to kind of reality. But I wanted to talk to you all about today. I know you're here for quilting, so I wanted to talk to you all about quilt labels, something that a lot of us either forego or forget, or we just don't want to get to it because it's the last thing. You've got your quilt done and you're like, yay, it's done. I don't want to be bothered with the quilt label. So if you know of any quilter who might be interested in hearing about my approach to quilt labels, hit the share button. And I'm going to show you, I have a pile of quilts back here that quilt inspector number 1 was guarding earlier. I posted some pictures of him laying on the quilt. So he was the keeper of the quilts this morning. But I have some examples that I do want to show you. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about why we want to label our quilts. It's really important to do that. Yeah, I have to admit that I was never really good at labeling my quilts. And I was one of those, like I said earlier, wow, it's done. I don't want to label it. But there's some real good reasons why we want to do that. And I do have a lot of quilts that need labels on them that are older quilts of mine. So here we go. So definitely hit the share button so others can hear the reasons and then see some of my examples that I've done. So couple reasons. One of them is for pure documentation. So say you giving quilts away, and people want to know who made it, who designed it. It's a historical notation, basically. You really want to let people who receive those quilts know that you were the maker of the quilt, and it becomes a permanent thing for them. You can even write it on a block in the quilt if you want. So it's something that they can look back to, and in years to come, when you're no longer here, or the quilt's gotten passed along and people are wondering who the quilt was made by, you have that information on there. So that's super important. There are a few things too that I like to put on the quilt label that are extremely important. Not just that it's made by you, but here are some of the things that I like to document. I like to document as much as I possibly can on it. So if it's a quilt that I designed, I'm going to put designed by Jackie Kunkel, pieced and quilted by Jackie Kunkel. Or if somebody else pieced it for me, I will put that information on there as well. You want to make sure that you put your name on it. If you designed it, if another designer designed it, credit them. There's no shame or harm in that. In fact, it's really good to know you might have been the maker of the quilt, but that designer would love that credit too. And so that way, if you gave that quilt away to somebody and they said, geez, I'm a quilter, I'd love to make that quilt, but I don't know where the design came from. If you credit the designer on the quilt, then they have an avenue to go find that pattern design and to be able to make it on their own if they so desire. So that's important. What's really important too is to document, and what I do, because quilts are made over usually a long period of time, sometimes shorter periods of time, but what I like to do is I always like to put the year, the month and the year. Most of my quilts these days are usually made in a short time frame, so they're usually made within like a few weeks. So I usually document it by putting the month and the year. So if I made a quilt this past March, the label's going to get on it that it was completed in March 2018. It was made then. But say I made that quilt over a period of several years. So say I started it in 2015 but finished it in 2017. I'm going to document on that label. I'm going to put 2015 to 2017. And I may know the month on each end, so I might want to say, gee, started it January 2015, finished June of 2017. So it's a great documentation of how long that actually took you to make. And it's something that the new owner will hopefully cherish too. So that's something that's super important. For me, also another thing that I like to put on quilt labels is, especially now that I have fabric collections, I like to put the fabric collection of mine that it is made from. So I will put on it, made using the Blue Moon fabric collection from Island Boutique. Just so that people, if they're wondering what the fabric is, it's there, it's documented. And so I'm going to show you a few examples. Sometimes you don't have a whole lot of time to do quilt labels, and sometimes you have more time. So I'm going to show you going from little time to having a little more time. Like what are some of your options? And I know that some of you probably have some really great ideas for quilt labels too. I've seen people that add like a piece of like an extra block. They use that as their quilt label, or they've like have an applique quilt and they have some extra applique pieces left and they use that on the back. One other thing that I have done with quilt labels that's not like the stack that I have back here, but you can also take a quilt label, make it ahead of time, piece it right into your back, and it becomes a permanent part of the quilt. Whereas most of the times the label is thought of as an afterthought and we applique it onto the back. So, but I'm going to show you what I do so it's kind of semi-permanent in a way, unless somebody wants to go through the trouble of really ripping it out. So let's start. So this quilt here, I didn't have a whole lot of time to do this, but I'm going to read what I wrote to you. I'm going to show you. I just wrote on just a plain piece of batik. It says the name of the quilt. The name of the quilt is Tarnished Windmill. The design is by Judy Niemeyer. The pattern is by Judy Niemeyer. It was pieced by Jackie Kunkel of Canton Village Quiltworks and where I live, Mesa, Arizona. Quilted by Margaret Solomon Gunn. So if you have it quilted by somebody else, definitely credit them as well. And the fabric collection, I wrote Fresh Pickins Island Boutique. So it was a simple, I'm going to come up close there. It was a simple, just written label, and I used a permanent marker and I heat set that. So, but you can see what I do here too is when I put the labels in, they are secured in two sides of the binding here and then appliqued here on the other two sides, okay? So they're appliqued down there. So they are secure in there, but that's what I typically do with my bindings. I always put them in a corner on the back of the quilt, and I always put a sleeve on my quilt too, even if it's for a bed quilt. So that's one example of not having a lot of time, but using a permanent marker and heat setting it. Here's another example. This is I did a smaller label, and I did the same thing. This is a quilt that I designed, and it's called Picket Fences, and I put designed and quilted by Jackie Kunkel, Mesa, Arizona, of Canton Village Quiltworks, and it was pieced. I had my friend Nedra Sorensen piece it for me, and this was using the Fresh Pickins fabric collection from Island Boutique, and it completed in May of 2017. So there you can see the very simple label. I didn't have a whole lot of time to mess with making it a little more elaborate. But again, I secured it along the edges of the binding and then appliqued it along the other sides. Okay, so those are a couple simple examples. Now, you can get a little more complex too, if you like. This is a quilt from my book, Splash of Color. And what I did is in my program on my Mac, it's equivalent to like Word on Windows in my Pages program. I came up with I took a picture of the quilt and then I did a little text box. So you actually get a picture of the quilt in the label, and I used the fabric sheets from Electric Quilt that you can run through your printer. So this quilt is called Lava Lamps, designed and pieced by Jackie Kunkel, quilted by Margaret Solomon Gunn, and I put completed July 24th, and at the time I lived in Canton, Connecticut. This was created for my first book, A Rainbow of Brilliant Black and White Quilts. But here is what I did. So see the difference in this? It's a little more elaborate. It has the picture of the quilt, but again, it's secured in both edges and then appliqued around two edges. But it's a little bit more elaborate, a little bit more fancy to do, but didn't take a whole lot of time because I did it on the computer and then just printed it off on the printer. So this is another example like that one. This is also a quilt from my book where I took the picture of the quilt, named it Proud Mary, designed and pieced by Jackie Kunkel, quilted by Margaret Solomon Gunn, completed August 2014. I lived in Canton, Connecticut, created for my first book, A Rainbow of Brilliant Black and White Quilts. And there again is that label. Simple, done on a Word type program on the computer and then printed off onto fabric paper that goes through your printer. And mine, I use the EQ printables is what I used. Then you can get a little more fancy. So now I started to embroider my labels, which I really like doing because you can get super creative there. And I use my designer Epic to do the embroidery. Typically I could do it right here on my screen, my touch screen. I can actually do it there, or I could do it from my computer in the embroidery program, and then it syncs wirelessly to my sewing machine, and it will then embroider it out. So this one here is an example of a rather quick one that I did. I didn't do anything special fancy on this, but I did it from the pad here on the computer. All I did was use a font. I didn't add anything extra, but I kept to what I was saying. I have the name of the quilt. It's Air Traffic Control, ATC, designed, pieced, and quilted by Jackie Kunkel, Mesa, Arizona, September 2017. Now, again, this is simple. I did not put my Blue Moon collection. I was in a little bit of a hurry, so I didn't get that in. But again, you can see that I secured it in the binding and then appliqued it along the sides. Oh, Nancy's saying she does hers on the machine too. Excellent. Awesome, Nancy. Again, here's another simple one done on my designer Epic. And it's similar. This one, though, was my spinning wheels pattern. A lot of you did the quilt along with this spinning wheels pattern. This one, designed and quilted by Jackie Kunkel, Mesa, Arizona. And this one was pieced by Lisa Slinsky, a friend of mine, and it was completed in September 2017. So again, there is the label done with embroidery from my designer Epic and secured on both sides in the binding and then appliqued around the top edges. Now, I started doing a little more fancy and a little bigger on the embroidery, and I really am enjoying doing it, embroidering them, because you can get fancy or you can get kind of plain, as you saw. Okay, so this one's a little bit bigger, and I'm going to hold it up close because the contrast and the thread that I use, probably you're not going to see too well, but I put a little bit of a decorative banner or frame at the top and the bottom of it, and I put Autumn Pines is the name of the quilt, designed by Judy Niemeyer, pieced and quilted by Jackie Kunkel, Canton Village Quiltworks, Mesa, Arizona, using the All Flutter Fabric Collection from Island Boutique. November 2017 is when it was completed. So you can see it's a much bigger quilt label, but I still have those very important things that you need. And you can see there's that decorative frame at the top and also at the bottom. And I chose a different font, so it looks really nice and neat, and really helps to keep I think the value as far as the emotional and memory value of your quilt high. Now, this one I got super excited about, and I did a really cool embroidery motif, and I've actually been doing it you're going to see some of the quilts coming up, but I can't show them now. Let's see what Nanette is saying. She says, I embroider mine directly on the backing before quilting, and I have heard of people removing the patch labels and claiming the work as their own. And that is true, Nanette. That's why you definitely want to get them secure in there. And as I did say earlier, you can definitely piece your labels. You can, if you don't want to embroider it right onto the backing, or write it right on the backing, what you could do is you can create an extra block and then piece your backing. But I like the idea of embroidering it right onto the backing too. just be careful depending on how large the quilt is, that it doesn't, show through maybe lighter areas on the front. So this one is, I have to say, I love this label. It's huge, but I love how it came out. This is for the butterfly garden quilt that was designed by Judy Niemeyer, pieced and quilted by me, Canton Village Quiltworks, Mesa, Arizona, December 2017. And you'll see here what I did. I put a beautiful butterfly on the label, and I used, actually I used the same font, but I used different sizes so that I could make it fit the way I wanted it. So I was able to do that on the embroidery program on the computer, and then it synced wirelessly with my designer Epic, and then I just embroidered it out. So you can be, as you saw from the examples, you can be super duper simple, or you can go kind of elaborate. And I've been going more elaborate in some of my newer quilts that you'll be seeing coming up soon, hopefully. Some of my all aflutter quilts that I just launched at Spring Market, I don't have back right now, but those are kind of on the elaborate side. And then the ones that have coming for the fall are pretty elaborate too. So I really like it. And it kind of adds an extra something nice too to your quilt. So don't forget to do your quilt labels. It's super important to do. And it's, if I hate to say this, but even if anything else, when you pass, your family has some kind of remembrance of you and the work that you have done, and they don't have to ask, well, gee, did mom make this quilt? Did grandma make this quilt? Who made this quilt? Maybe it wasn't even yours. Somebody gave it to you. But they know where it came from. So that's kind of your heritage, something that they can cherish when you're gone. And I think about that. I know it's kind of a weird thing to think about, but I do think about that. I want my kids to have my quilts, and I want people that I gave my quilts to remember me in that way. So if not for anything else, do it for your family, right? Anyway, and I've got one more thing I just want to remind you all of too before I go. So if you are going to be doing the Diamonds in the Rough quilt along with us beginning July 11th, don't forget to get your pattern. A lot of you have gotten your pattern already and are getting yourself all set. If you've started to choose your fabric, don't forget to post it in the Quilt Alongs with Canton Village Quiltworks Facebook page. Love to see what you guys are posting or picking for your fabrics. It's going to be a great quilt along. We've got quite a few people in it already, and many of you have purchased the printed pattern or downloaded the PDF pattern. So it's on my site and it is on sale, so you can go ahead and grab that pattern, and we'll be starting the quilts along on July 11th. Anyway, I hope that you all enjoyed this episode about quilt labels. If you have any special techniques or tips that you do for your quilt labels, why don't you share them here in the comments? That would be awesome. And hit the share button and share this with some of your quilting buddies too on your timeline. That way they can share in my ideas and then see other people's comments as well. It's always great to get other new ideas and tips and techniques from other people too. So definitely share your comments about how you do your labels. I'd love to see them, love to hear about it. Anyway, until, next week, by the way, I won't be here doing Watch Me Wednesday. I will be at Vermont Quilt Festival. I will be teaching there, and I'm also one of their feature lecturers as well. So if you're going to Vermont Quilt Festival, please make sure you stop in and see me. If you want to sign up for my class, I think there's a few seats left in some of the classes. I'm teaching 4. So definitely go onto their website, check it out, and also sign up for the lecture. I think you need to sign up for the lecture because I think they have only so many seats. There's a lot of seats, but I think they only have so many. So I would definitely love to see you. Come say hi. I will be there. I have a quilt hanging in the faculty showcase. So you can check that out too. And actually, I have gotten some emails and comments from some of my students that they have entered some of their quilts that I taught them in Vermont Quilt Festival as well. So that's going to be a thrill for me to see those quilts hanging at the festival in the show. So anyway, I won't see you next week, but I will see you the week after. And then we're getting ever so close to the new quilt along. So I'm looking forward to that. Yay, Laura, get your tickets. That's right, get your ticket for me. It's for Friday night is the lecture. So Friday night is my lecture, and I hope to see you all there. I will have lots of quilts to show you during my lecture, and you'll hear a little bit more about me and how I kind of got into quilting and well, a lot more. So anyway, hope to see you all there, and have a great week, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.